Morning, everybody. My name is Scott Mendenhall. If you're online watching this, or if you're in the movie theater, man, we're excited that it's Easter morning. And what we've been trying to do all day today is take people's stories and tell you how they intersect with the Jesus story. And notice, as you've already listened to a few of the stories, that when Jesus' story is in our stories, change happens. And so today, I got my good friend, Dan Woodham, who is from Tampa, Florida. We're bringing him in all the way. How we doing, Dan?
Doing wonderful, Scott. How are you doing this morning?
Well, we're doing fabulous, man. I like how we both didn't know that each other was going to wear a hockey jersey. I just felt like I needed to, just to make sure you knew where I stood and you stood.
Absolutely.
And people in Minnesota are all cringing that I have a Blackhawk jersey on and you have a Lightning. Somebody wishes the Minnesota team would be represented, but it is by Vikings, but not by the Wild. We're not here to talk about hockey. We're here to talk about...
The Wild did clinch the playoffs, so we'll see.
We will see. But hold on. I've lived here long enough that they've done that quite a bit of time. And they go out after the first round. It's like any great Viking sports team. We can make it to the playoffs, but we don't normally make it out of the first round of nothing. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just reality. But this isn't a sports channel for any of those. Wait, I thought it was Dan's story. Dan's just a big fan of all things Tampa. We could get into the Buccaneers and the sad state the Buccaneers are in, but we're not going to do that. We're talking about Dan's story, not his team's stories. And Dan is part of our Rooted group. We meet on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock online with his beautiful and wonderful wife, Jennifer. And they are doing amazing things down there just outside Tampa. They are gardeners. They know how to raise chickens and children. And they just had an infestation of wild caterpillars that turn into moths. That what do they do to you? They leave like...
Yeah, they're stinging caterpillars. They will leave like fiberglass hairs in your skin if you touch them. So got to watch out.
Yeah, and as we flash a picture up there of this said caterpillar, I asked this the other day in Rooted Group, had you guys seen any of them turn into moths? And I just don't understand how you have so many falling out of the sky that it's like it's a hazard to go outside that by now you haven't seen like a multitude amount of those moths. Why is that?
Crazy.
Is something eating the caterpillars?
I guess. I'm hoping it's like an apocalypse here.
Okay, everybody else in Minnesota is like, it ain't even spring here yet. No insect is even thinking about emerging from the snow yet. Those who are watching online, maybe you're full-fledged spring, and congrats. Not here in Minnesota. Nobody, if you're going to take pictures outside for Easter, that's a popular thing, family pictures outside, it's going to look like you did it right around Christmas. And so good luck, everyone in Minnesota, taking those pictures. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do an interview style with Dan over the next few moments. I'm going to ask him a few questions like, hey, what does love require you to do? Or what does love require? What does that mean to him? We're going to just go along and hear his story and just notice the details in his story of how the Jesus story became real. And maybe your story is similar to Dan's story, and you can have similar results to Dan's stories, the outcome where he is today, if you allow the Jesus story to do what it does best, which is change us from the inside out. So Dan, will you start us off like the details, right? I set it up that you're got a little farm down there, but can you just start with your story of like who you are today, how many kids do you have, and then get into your story of telling us the Jesus story in your story.
Absolutely. As a father of two beautiful kids, my daughter Faith is 20, almost 21 next month. Parker is 15, and you all know my beautiful wife Jennifer. For me, I always wished I had this, hilltop, fabulous testimony. For me, I was raised in a Christian home. And so, yet it was a broken home. At 13, my parents were divorced. It was something that I was always going to church. I went to Catholic school, had the influences of God, but never really took it to the next level, never really had that relationship. And so for me, it was, I was always involved in sports, doing high adventure stuff with my dad all the time. In fact, when I was shortly after my parents were divorced, my dad and I got plugged in with a sports director here in Tampa to help coach various sports teams. And so getting plugged into the youth, I always love to give back and coach and do that kind of stuff.
Well, just, as you talk, Dan, as you talk there about your dad, what made your relationship with your dad so important that, like, as I've heard your story, like, this guy is a rock star. So why is that relationship so profound in your life?
I got the opportunity to be able to see God work in my dad. And for me, it was just like a moth being drawn to it. It's like seeing how God worked in him. I wanted to be close to that. I wanted to mirror that. That was, in my teenage formative years, I was lucky enough to call my dad my best friend. I mean, we would attend Promise Keepers meetings almost annually. For a lot of the guys back in the day, remember those. We even volunteered as counselors at the Billy Graham Crusade that was held here in 1998 at the Tampa Stadium. So that was really cool. But I must say, the coolest thing for me was watching how God worked one day when we were walking into a Burger King for dinner, and there was a homeless guy sitting outside, and my dad went up and struck up a conversation with him and literally gave him the shirt off of his back to this guy who had nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, that was incredible.
Well, even as you tell that story, I just, in our conversations, now I get where you get some of that, wanting to see needs and meet needs. Whenever we talk about those things or on Sundays, you're in the chat talking about, see a need, meet a need. I think the line that always I credit you the most with, and I always butcher it, so correct me, Dan, is we're just all beggars trying to lead another. What is it? What do you say?
We're just one beggar telling another beggar where food is.
That's it. That's the line. You say it. I love it. It's like, yes, that's Dan's statement, which is so true. As I hear your story that you're talking about, I mean, it would be a safe assumption in your story up to this point in your story that, man, life's been pretty good except for one setback, and that would be your parents divorcing around 13 years of age. But then you got this tight relationship with your dad. So many people are listening going, I wish that was my story. And you are attending all of these big Christian events, helping other people find Jesus. Is it a safe assumption to say from here on forward, life was awesome and you didn't have any moments where you wandered away, that you have done it perfect ever since your teenage years?
No, unfortunately, for me, I always seem to chase after the accolades of the world, pleasures of the world kind of thing, and was trying to please the wrong people, I guess, rather than trying to please the God that loves me more than anything. So for me, it was really, I guess I would say right around the time that I met my wife a year later in 1999, straight out of high school. At that time, I didn't know how much I needed her as much as God really knew that I needed her in my life. Actually, let me go back. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So it was about a year later that I met my wife in 1999. I didn't know how much that I needed her in my life, but God did. In fact, 3 years later, we started a family. My dad, again, was my best man at my wedding. And then really, I still had that tie with my dad, doing all kinds of awesome things. We got into rock climbing. In fact, Jennifer and I, we were big rock climbers in our early 20s, and building all the muscles and the guns, being able to do all the cool, crazy stuff. That's what really led me into kind of the next step in my life.
Okay, so let me pause you in this rock climbing stuff because that's intriguing. Why rock climbing? Out of all the sports you could be in, Jen did it with you. That's pretty wild. And now you're at about the age of 24, so something else happened at about the age of 24 for remembering your story that's like a defining moment. But why rock climbing before you tell us about what happened at the age of 24?
Well, you live in Florida. Why not choose rock climbing to do a high adventure sport? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All the mountainous terrain here in Florida.
Yeah.
We actually had a really awesome gym that some friends of ours plugged us in with, and it was kind of the coolest thing ever. I mean, doing all kinds of high adventure stuff, that's right up my bucket list. I want to do all that stuff. And so when we got plugged in with that, I mean, it was a training training for that was next level. the things that you do and the muscles that you build are just intense. And learning to trust in people, trust in yourself and your strength, and trust that God's not going to let something terrible happen to you. But I will say, at that time, at 24, that's when I finally got that nudge. God just continuing to nudge me. You really never really been baptized by your own will and your own choice. And so that was another area of God really kind of speaking to me. And so at 24, at my pinnacle of my rock climbing career, my muscles all jacked up. In fact, I even had dreads. So people would see me with no hair. I actually had dreads being baptized. It was then that I got baptized. And then, that's what really kind of made my relationship start to move in the right direction.
So at this point, sorry, Dan, but at this point, then you're getting baptized. So people have perspective. We're going to rank your relationship with Jesus at this point. 10 being not perfection, but you're reading your Bible every day. You have worship songs going on, and your attitude is that of Christ Jesus. Okay, that's the 10. 0 being I got nothing to do with it. Okay, I believe in, but it's not active. Where would you be as you're getting baptized at 24 years old?
I would think that I'd be at a 10, but if I was honest with myself, and especially looking backwards, I maybe took the baptism from like a 3 to a 5. Now I knew God. Now I'm starting to make those right decisions, but I still wasn't all in. And so for me, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, was God's evidence for me really was fully secured on August 21st, 2015. That was the day that my dad lost his battle with cancer. He had bladder cancer, and so when we finally saw that day coming, and we're all surrounding his hospital bed, all of our family. In fact, we had the hospital chaplain standing at the end of the bed. We're saying our goodbyes, and my sister asks, Dad always liked to listen to Christian music all the time, even when he's in the hospital, can't do anything. So my sister said, do you mind if I play some Christian music? I said, absolutely. So she pulls out her phone, lays it up on the bed, and the song that came on was I Can Only Imagine by MercyMe. Let me tell you, the lyrics of that song were absolutely perfect. In fact, it says, surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. So, of course, as you can imagine, we're all continuing to cry, as some of you are now, even just hearing this, and we're watching his heartbeat slowly decline. And let me tell you, as the song draws to a close, on the exact last note of the song, not a millisecond too soon or too late, his heart stops at the end of the song. Even the hospital chaplain looked up from the end of the bed and said out loud to all of us, did that really just happen? That to me was like, God, you are here. I mean, that was the coolest thing. That definitely took me from that 5, what I thought would have been a 10, definitely took me to about an 8. I was still closer, but still, I wasn't all there. And I'm just being real with all of you. It really wasn't until summer of 2019. That's where it really all the rubber hit the road.
So when you say 2019, that's 4 years. This is now fast forwarding 4 years from the passing of your dad, which, man, that is a wild, I'm in awe of that story. And my question, Dan, before we get into 2019 for you, that's tragic. Right? Your dad's passing. Yeah, it's a moment in your life. What drew you closer to God, didn't push you away. Can you just give, for those that maybe have had the opposite experience, where a tragic event has repelled them away, pushed them away from God, what was it for you that drew you in versus pushed you away?
It was hard because he was my best friend. He really was, until my wife took that position. But still, it was seeing that God was there and that his story was weaved into this. And he said, when that happened for us that day, it was like God saying, I'm here. There's no denying it. And so that was a cornerstone in my faith and will be forever.
Yeah, it's having the, like we talk about all the time here, having the eyes to see when Jesus shows up and shows off, right? Like, yes, that's a sad moment in your life, but also a moment where Jesus, like, we call it around here a lot of times when Jesus winks at you. And it can be at any moment, right? Success or failures, and he winks at you. I got you still. I still am king. I'm sovereign in your story. My story is woven into your story. And so I just thought people would like to hear, because that's very unique to your story. Tragedy pushed you closer to Jesus versus repelled you. So now we're going to fast forward to 2019. You were talking about, 4 years after this event in the hospital with the song I Can Only Imagine playing. Now 4 years fast forward, and you're talking about your marriage. What was going on in that year for you guys?
So over those 4 years, yeah, it's easy to go from those mountaintop experiences where you are on fire for God, and every one of us have had those. And for me, though, I let the desires and seeking approval from people of the world, career, you name it, to really chase after those things rather than what really mattered most. And so it really was the summer of 2019 that all of that came to a culmination where I actually was ready to throw in the towel on my own marriage. I knew how real God was and the impact that Jesus had on my life, but I didn't fully surrender for him. And my family, unfortunately, paid the consequence of that price. I've always been concerned about what people would think of me. And I think a lot of us do struggle with that. But it was actually at that time that my godsend of a wife prayed for me of biblical proportions. I mean, night after night, she spent next to our bedside on her knees while I'm laying there in bed questioning all my life's decisions. I mean, she prayed harder for me and poured out God's love and grace that changed my life forever. So she stood by for the nearly 20 years of our life together. And I could never repay her for what she's doing, what she did for our family and for me, but I'll spend forever trying.
So Dan, when you say that, Dan, about your marriage and she's praying really hard, I think there's probably some people going, what can you give a, maybe I'll ask the question and you can say I don't want to answer it, but was it that you were neglecting? Like, were you not behaving as a follower of Jesus at that point? What is driving her to pray so hard for you in what feels like a redemption part of your story, where it's a comeback to Jesus, like almost like you were a prodigal son in a sense, that you're wandering away. Yep. What did that look like for you in that? What's pushing her to pray like that?
Yeah, I think it was I was trying to build career. I was trying to build, what I thought were the earthly idols, and, build your wealth, build your, all this and that. And unfortunately not pouring into or being the spiritual leader of my family. And so, that really was not the highlight reel of my life that I wish I could go back, but it's something that I know I'm not the first one to go through that. And if I can be that light or influence to help somebody else, you can definitely overcome that.
Yeah, I think here's where, like, if we were doing a movie of your life, Dan, and I was the director or producer or editor, I'll do all three of those for you. I would change the music all of a sudden, right? Up to this moment, okay, you say this, it's like sad music, right? But all of a sudden, the music's going to slowly transition here, because so does your story in the Jesus story at this point where your wife has been praying like crazy. Music starts to change in the documentary of your life, because what happens now? She's been praying hard, 2019 into 2020. What transpires in your life?
So it was almost a year later, and especially after she had been praying forever, just so that my heart would change and that I would seek godly counsel versus counsel from the world. I had a recurring dream almost summer of 2020, when all the pandemic, all that stuff was happening. But that for almost a week straight, I would have this dream, and the only thing that I could wake up and remember were 4 words: what would love require? I don't know why I had that night after night after night. And then a couple days, I'd say almost about a week later, I found your channel, and there were those 4 words. And instantly it was like, God is, I mean, this is clearly another sign. You're pointing me to this direction. And that's what ultimately led my family here to Unlock Church.
Yeah, and when you say our channel, you're talking about the One Wheel channel. You bought a One Wheel pint, right? And then you started following us. I don't know why, just because of information we were putting out about it. And then we tagged on the end for a season, what would love require you to do? And that was the ending to all of our videos. And then you found that, which then led you to Unlock Church Online, which now you've been a part of since 2020. You guys haven't missed a Sunday. I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Maybe when you've traveled and you got in and said good morning. But so what's that been? So 2020 up to now, as you are a part of Unlock Church, what's transpired as that coming back to Jesus moment, as the Jesus story really intersects into your story for the last couple years?
Yeah, God's definitely weaved this all together. And nowadays, I love spending as much time as possible going through the Word, listening to Christian music, having my quiet time, which is so important to me, and being able to speak boldly now, praying with my family on a regular basis, praying with my clients, my friends, just stepping out in God's love. So that question, I have to turn back on each and every one of you. What does love require of you? Because for me, it's trusting in Jesus fully and surrendering to his will for my life.
Oh, Dan, that's so good. That's so good. Like, I just am blown away with your story and how well you've put it together, where you see Jesus and his story intersecting your story repeatedly and the change that comes about. If anything, as we wrap this whole thing up, I hope everybody sees in everyone's story that the Jesus story changes your story only if you let it. You have to let it. It can't be, I know of the story, because even as Dan's was sharing there, he knew of the story. It was as the story became more and more real through events in his life, from the hospital bed to his wife praying to what does love require. All those are Jesus on a megaphone going, I would like your attention, please. I would like to change your life forever. So Dan, thank you for sharing your story. Oh man, it's so good, Dan. Thank you for finding our channel, being so faithful, being a part of Unlock Church digitally. You make Sundays fun. Your family makes it fun. So it's fun to follow you on Instagram. And one of the things that you didn't say that I'll let everyone else know, that this dude's a knight. Like, you're my only friend that is a knight. Like, you have been knighted.
Legit, yes.
I mean, it's legit. So, like, how awesome is that? I don't know many pastors that are in the United States could say that they have a knight that attends their church. Maybe in England you can, but in the United States, I feel like we're... So thank you, Dan, for how awesome your family is. Thank you that you've said yes to coming on the mission trip. So those that have never got to shake the hand of this amazing family, they will be at the mission trip in Arkansas in May. So, Dan, thank you. And we will catch up with you and everybody else. You're going to get to listen to music, and we'll be right back live in the studio right after this video. All right, Dan, thank you, man. Did you feel like you nailed it?
Yeah.
That was good.
So good.
Lily's saying, so good. Lily, you did great back there as well. Now, that's a long interview that we will cut up and try to make it down to like